it's not exactly about stopping thoughts. It is about the transformation of the energy of thought into a deeper consciousness, right? When we talk sometimes about the upayas, Shaktupaya, which means the path of energy, is also translated as the path of mind. What they're really talking about is the transformation of the level of consciousness that mind functions in into a higher state of consciousness, right? So then we're not beating our thoughts to death. We're not, negating them exactly, but we're not trying to sit there and it's like herding cats a little bit, right? Right. It's like herding cats and chickens in the same room, right? Right. So instead, what we're trying to do is to, if you will, to reach deeper into ourself, to find a place of consciousness that thoughts do not penetrate, if you will, so that we recognize thoughts for the particular level of functioning that they are, and we get a lot less attached to them. This is the big problem with thoughts, is that we're very attached to them and we believe them, right? And so what we really want to do, and what I try to help people to understand, it really is the consuming of thought, putting it into the flow so that it can rise into a higher level of consciousness, right? Now within the Tantric tradition, there's an entire school called Spanda, right? Which means initial impulse. It's one of the ways that it's described, right? The Spanda school is suggesting that all of life arises out of the initial, almost imperceptible movement of consciousness, right? Boy, how sweet that sounds, right? Right. And so part of the training within that particular school is to be able to recognize thought as it arises, right? Recognize, because we're centered in ourselves, we can see that train coming, and we don't just stand in the middle of the track saying, oh, that's not really a train coming at me, right? And we don't try to fight with the train. Okay, I'll butt heads with the train. I'll play chicken with the train, right? Well, we know how that would work out. So by becoming very still in ourselves, by becoming really centered in our heart, finding a certain place of stillness, we can see the arising of thought, and we can just do the Michael Jackson moon dance. We just step back and it just moves on by. And then we're not feeding that thought. We're not feeding the level of consciousness within us that thought is reinforcing. And by doing that repeatedly, over and over again, the first thing that begins to happen is we become much less attached to our thoughts. We recognize that they're like waves on the ocean, right? And we don't have to get all involved in them. And that's a level of discipline that allows us to detach and to, at the same time, to absorb all that kinetic energy of the mind, right? This thing is just going on, and really feed it into a deeper level of consciousness in ourselves. So in a sense, you can see that's kind of in between, right? Right. Advaita practices are saying you have nothing to do, and they're absolutely right, right? How many of us can do that, right? Within the Tantric tradition, then, again, to refer to the upayas, then the highest path, which is called Shambhavopaya, is exactly that, the path of awareness, the capacity to simply tune into our true nature and allow it to show itself, right? Those of us that unfortunately weren't able to just, walk into that space, then we have some work to do in the sense that we're really about the internalization of our awareness by attaching our awareness to the energy of flow inside, right? And consuming the level of thought, consuming the level of mind, consuming the level of ego. And thought function within that particular dynamic. I think the biggest problem with our thoughts is we believe them. We're not willing to suspend our attachment and belief in them long enough to see maybe there is a different perspective, maybe there isn't a different reality, right? Maybe there's a different insight, right? So then that practice, the discipline of surrendering thought, if you will, becomes very important. And that's exactly what we're really doing, is really surrendering the energy behind thought that we turn into action. Shaktipat is really the tuning in of a resonance, right? So there's a dynamic energy field that's set up, right? That's functioning from a place of stillness, and so your mechanism just begins to tune to that, you know. And so 2 minutes after class is over, then the thoughts are still there, right? Right. So it's not exactly that the thoughts go away. It's just the level of functioning, the level of awareness that we're functioning from is different. Yes, as you are internalizing your energy, your own life force, into a deeper state of consciousness, into the deeper places of chakras within ourselves, then we're tuning into a place that thoughts don't particularly function, right? And that becomes our experience. Our experience of that space becomes bigger and bigger, if you will. And after a while, then there's not really thought in the sense that, what about me? What about this? How can this be different, right? Then we're really functioning from a different place. You know, I think that one of the really interesting things about spiritual work that I have witnessed over years is that there's a certain disbelief with people who do spiritual work that they really can find a different place in themselves, right? And so we automatically reinforce that disbelief, right? So then we kind of keep looking back instead of just continuing to really look forward and really look and find a different place and find a different place instead of reinforcing the place that we are unwilling to let go of. Why would our life, which has been divinely offered to us, be offered for any other purpose than pure joy? So when we find ourselves not functioning from that place, instead of beating ourselves up or this or that, let's just start looking for it. There was a Rumi line the other day. I love Facebook. It's where I get all my knowledge, right? And basically the line says, the wounds that you receive are where the divine light gets in. Right? How beautiful. All of this fight and this struggle that we have with our ego is the very thing that's trying to open us. Well, let's get bigger than our ego and let that light really, if you will, shed a light on the real truth about our existence, which is we're not our mind and we're not our thoughts and we're not our ego. We are that divine awareness. When we find ourselves pressed up and struggling, that is the very energy in us trying to free us from the place that's causing us to struggle. Be grateful that it's being exposed to you instead of pissed off, instead of, running away from it, or this or that, or blaming yourself, right? Blame God, right? Blame the devil, who cares, right? Just don't dwell on it that much, right? And this cement encasing that we have around our heart that has to be open from the inside is thick and dense and takes a lot of diligence of openness, a lot of diligence of wish, and a lot of gratitude. Perhaps that gratitude is the only thing that just dissolves all that density. Because then we're even grateful for the real difficulties of our life, because we see them as opportunities to change instead of rationale to stay the same. What is the point of our life? Pain and agony? I don't think so.